Mr. Colon, I just wanted to ask you a question. Um, what inspired you? Where did the inspiration for politics come from? Was it when you were young? How did this all come about? Because you've been really, really in the media. I could tell, just everybody knows and can tell that you're just deeply involved in politics with this state. And I just want to know, where does all this come from?
Well, I mean, Stephen, I think at the beginning and the end of the day, for me, it's really not about politics, but it's about public service. And it started. I was a young man. You know, I grew up in Valencia County, just south of Albuquerque, in Los Lunas and Bosque Farms, and I had two parents who were disabled. We grew up like most New Mexicans in poverty, and I'm the first in my family to be able to break that cycle of poverty and go to college. And after burying my father when I was a teenager, he was 49 years old. And you know, for me, it's about gratitude and living a life of service. And I've always been able to find really enriching ways to do that, whether it's in my service in public office now, or being involved in New Mexico's political landscape, which is so dynamic, or whether it's working in the nonprofit sector, or what I like to call social profit sector. You know, served on countless boards in the community. Any organization that tries to lift up our children, lifts up our community, and helps people get where they want to be from where they are today, I'm usually supportive. And for me, I always told my son that I've got a deep debt of gratitude that I'll never be able to repay fully, but I'm going to die trying. And for me, that's what's given me that passion for public service. It's the reason I step up when I'm called upon to run. It's the reason and the source for my tenacity for not giving up. And it has been so rewarding. My life slogan is your success in life is always directly proportional to the success you help others achieve. And in public office, you get to touch a lot of lives. I can mentor countless young people, which I have over the years. Any given time, I've got several dozen young people I'm mentoring and using every resource I have to get them where they want to be from where they are today. And I love leveraging that opportunity. But I can only do that so much, right? I go to bed at midnight, I get up every day at 5 a.m., but I can still only touch so many lives one-on-one. But if you get involved in the political landscape, in the public policy landscape, you literally have the chance to affect hundreds of thousands of lives with your service. And I think that's what is the long answer to the short question is, why am I involved in politics? For me, it's about service. And I think that politics is a wonderful way to change lives and lift people up. And you know, after having won this election in a hard-fought primary, winning by a 26-point margin, and then the general election against an incumbent, getting over 400,000 votes, it was incredible validation that people really know that my leadership comes from a place that is genuine, and it's I lead with my heart. I've been told that a million times, and many people said you can never succeed in politics because you're just too doggone nice. I'm hoping to break that trend. I don't think you have to be difficult. I don't think you have to be disrespectful. And I don't think you have to see the world in black and white to be able to be a leader in politics and change people's lives. And that's what I'm trying to do.
Nice. It sounds like, you know, all of the attention that you've gotten in the public, it sounds like your heart has led to that, and it sounds like you needed such a great heart to win a swift battle like that. So I want to ask you, that's the other thing. So you swiftly won this election. You're now the state auditor of New Mexico. What do you think what's the status of the state of New Mexico as far as the auditing go? I mean, there's a lot of, you know, like controversy in our community. Some people think like, you know, this is New Mexico, they think, I don't know what they're doing up there with them, you know, that type of thing. Is there an issue with auditing, or how does that work? I mean, what's the status of New Mexico with auditing?
Sure. Well, you know, this is a fantastic office, and it's the Office of Accountability for New Mexico. It is the taxpayer's tool in order to make sure that their government is held accountable. And we have to approach this office as a partnership with New Mexicans. And that's one of the great visions I have for this office, is to engage as many New Mexicans as possible to help us do the work we do. Look, we do hundreds of audits every year, nearly 1,000 audits on any given year. We either oversee or we conduct them in this office with 36 tremendous civil servants civil servants who in the private sector could be compensated far more financially. But these folks come into this office every day knowing that they're doing really important work to protect New Mexico's taxpayers. And that's a real phenomenal opportunity they have every day. And they do a great job. But between you and me, and between all your viewers, I will tell you that we are still limited in what our capacity is to root out waste, fraud, and abuse. And I'm going to change the dialogue in this, because what we know by the certified fraud examiners of the world, we know that only a small portion of waste, fraud, and abuse is uncovered by auditing. Well, we know that another good portion of that waste, fraud, and abuse that's identified is actually investigated thanks to whistleblowers, people that use fraud hotlines, and people that engage with auditors to say, look, you might be out here every year looking for a needle in a haystack, but if you're just testing transactions and trying to tie out some numbers, you may find some fraud. But if you as a taxpayer can say, look, forget the bale of hay, or forget that needle in a haystack, I can tell you where the bale of hay is. You pull off a couple of flakes, you're going to find it right there. And that allows our auditors to test in particular areas of risk. And when they do that, that's when we uncover the most egregious forms of waste, fraud, and abuse. So what does that mean? That means that when people throw up their hands and say, oh, pues, it's New Mexico, that's the way it's always done, we can't help each other succeed. We can't lift ourselves out of the state we've been in. But what I'm convinced is I'm going to take this office on the road. In the first 18 months, and I just finished my first 31 days of excellence here, and every one of them has been a fantastic day. We sit here on February 1st, almost 2% of my term is completed. And what I can tell you is I've learned that we've got a great group of civil servants that work here and the tools to fight waste, fraud, and abuse. But what's going to really empower us is I'm taking this office on the road. In my first 18 months of service, I intend to be in all 33 counties, taking the auditor's office to the people and asking the people to identify those areas of risk in their community where they've walked up and they've done a transaction in government and they thought, they got that weird feeling in their stomach and said, something doesn't seem right here. This situation just doesn't feel right. And instead of going, pues it's New Mexico, and walking away, I want them to think, I'm going to call the state auditor's office and I'm going to let him know, that guy Brian Colon, who grew up in poverty in Valencia County, who's now working hard to protect my county, I'm going to call him up and tell him what I'm thinking. Now I can protect them and they don't have to identify themselves, but they are some of the most important people in New Mexico. If we're going to break the cycle of abuse and waste and fraud in New Mexico and change people's perception, taxpayers are going to have to engage with this office. And I couldn't be more proud than to have been elected to be the person that gets to interact with those people that want to lift up their communities.
Do you feel that your background as an attorney, does that give you the kind of fortitude in that industry that you need to go after this
Stephen,
type
here's
of
the thing. Here's the thing. Who was the state auditor 13 years ago?
I don't know.
Right. But if I mentioned Hector Balderas got elected 12 years ago, you'd know that he was the state auditor before he became Attorney General, right?
Right.
There's a reason for that. Before Attorney General Balderas was elected state auditor, there had never been an attorney elected to this office. But this office has constitutional subpoena power, and that's a very important thing. And it's a very powerful thing when we're fighting waste, fraud, and abuse. And he understood that because he was an attorney. So he was able to take this office from being an office that nobody in New Mexico knew existed, much less know who the auditor is, to an office of substance, to an office that actually actively fought waste, fraud, and abuse in New Mexico. And they knew that there was a state auditor, and a lot of people knew that Hector Balderas was the state auditor. And ever since then, we've seen a progress. We've seen an opportunity where his administration fought waste, fraud, and abuse. Then we elected Tim Keller, who brought in a phenomenal leadership team who said, not only are we going to fight waste, fraud, and abuse, but we're also going to create a government accountability office, because we're in the unique position here in this office of the state auditor to be able to gather data and produce reports to policy leaders. We can't make policy here, but what we can do is gather data and then put that data in front of policy leaders and say, look, this is important, this is the data, you may want to do something about it. So Auditor Keller, now Mayor Keller, took this office from just fighting waste, fraud, and abuse to fighting waste, fraud, and abuse and getting engaged in public policy discussions. And now for me, my charge is to build on their good work And I think it's a perfect time to take this office on the road. Had I tried to be the auditor on the road 13 years ago, people would have been, I don't want to be audited. They don't want to talk to the auditor. Auditing's a bad word, right? So, but now they know that the state auditor's office actually protects their taxpayer dollars from being wasted or being fraudulently used. And now is the time to get out there on the road and ask them to engage with us. So for me, it's the perfect time and place to have somebody like me who's got a finance background. I got a finance degree. Go Aggies. I know you're a fellow Aggie.
Yes, sir.
So graduated from New Mexico State University with my finance degree, and then went to law school at UNM. So that finance degree and my law degree, having practiced for 17 years in New Mexico, is really a wonderful lens that gives me the capacity to be effective in mobilizing these civil servants in this office. And when I say civil servants, that means they're not political hires. They're here for careers. They've been in government and they serve the taxpayers, not at the pleasure of the state auditor, but because they want to make a difference. And so I get to lead those kind of people that are passionate about making New Mexico a better place. I mean, it's no wonder I get up every day at 5 o'clock in the morning ready to go. I mean, this is a phenomenal opportunity, and we're at a crossroads. You asked where I thought New Mexico was now, and I'm telling you, the stars are aligned for us to really make a hard right, to really take that turn and say that we are no longer going to be accepting of being at the bottom of the good list and the top of the bad. We're turning the page in New Mexico. Right? Nueva página. We have a new opportunity here. And I think with this governor, with the federal delegation, I think we're all pulling in the same direction. My direction is good government, regardless of party affiliation. I said it a million times on the campaign trail. Waste, fraud, and abuse doesn't have a party affiliation. It's not registered as a Democrat or Republican. So for me, this office can't be either. It has to be an office that's laser-like focused on pushing back and fighting waste, fraud, and abuse. And that's what we get to do for the next 47 months.
Let me ask you a question, Brian. And a lot of people in this state, I don't know who came up with this term, but they call it the patron state. Maybe, you know. So our state is, I think we're last in nationwide in certain aspects. Do you think that maybe fraud and waste and abuse within the state has put us there? And do you think you can change it? Is that what's going on? Or
look, I think, and it's been unfortunate, but over the last 12 years, we've seen Democrats and Republicans both make really bad mistakes and abuse taxpayers by committing fraudulent transactions and stealing money from the taxpayers, hence taking money off the plates of our children, right? Because when money, here's the other fundamental thing that we need to think about as a state. When there's waste, fraud, and abuse, who receives the most devastating impact? It's those who are in need the most, right? It's the kids like me that grew up on blocks of cheese and powdered milk and lived in Section 8 housing. We're the ones that are suffering at the bottom, right? And so I think that we've agreed now that in order to serve that population, we've got to demand excellence. And for me, this office is going to spend the next 4 years embracing excellence. We're going to celebrate when we get it right, and we're going to hold ourselves accountable when we get it wrong. And that's how you create a culture of excellence. And that's what this office is going to be about. And that's what all our stakeholders are going to know. And I expect your viewers to hold me accountable. And if I blow it, they got to call me out. And I expect to be called out. And I welcome that opportunity. You know, we talk about the patron system. And what I guess I'd say is that I really do, and maybe it was slow, but I think times have changed. As we sit here in the year 2019, you've got a guy from Valencia County who buried his father and didn't have a single blood relative in the state of New Mexico from the time I was a teenager. Not a single blood relative. The community raised me. Now, if it was really still the old patron system, wouldn't I have needed familia in the north? Wouldn't I have needed the patron to be able to bless me along the way, right? You have me in this office. You have Stephanie Garcia Richard serving as land commissioner. You have Hector Balderas, a mocosito from Wagon Mound, who again is not, doesn't have family all over the state, who didn't have all the resources. None of us had the money to buy these offices. Like this is blood, sweat, and tears. It's been a long journey. Those are who your statewide elected officials are. Howie Morales from Silver City, who's a young man of color who's got a PhD. New Mexicans said that's what they want in their leadership. right? We always talk about putting education first in New Mexico. The way you do that is elect a guy from Silver City, a young man of color, who actually has a PhD in education. That's how you put education first. And that's what the voters did in November. So for me, I really do think that it is a different time for New Mexico. Look at all the young people. Look at all the new legislators. We have 112 people who are elected to be in our legislature, right? 42 members in the upper chamber and 70 members in the House. And if you take a look at the composition of those chambers, it is much different than it was even 5 years ago. Why? You have people of color. You have more women than we've ever had before. The leadership of the House is almost all women except for Speaker Egoff. It's all women. And they're all women of color. So when you talk about my son, who's now 21, he's not that young kid that I still think of him as, but when you talk about my son looking up at the leadership in New Mexico, he can see a reflection of himself. For many years, that wasn't the case. So I say all that to say this. I think that, you know, at least anecdotally, maybe it was fair to say we were in the Patron system. I just think those days are over. I think now blood, sweat, and tears and hard work and good ethics can get you where you want to go in New Mexico.
Right, right. And I think that people are seeing that, and I'm glad that I'm interviewing you now because we're able to really see this. And so I'm getting the ideal that you believe that if we do business the right way, it's going to elevate our state, and you're going to take out, you're going to do everything clean, and we're going to have clean profits, and everything's going to be done right.
That's a wrap. Done. You nailed it. You nailed it, Stephen.
Right.
That's exactly right. That's exactly what I'm saying. But you're not a politician, guy, so you can say it much shorter than I can say it.
Right.
But that's perfect. That's exactly right. Look, one of my mentors he was a former banker for many years, and then he took over the Albuquerque Hispano Chamber. His name is Alex Romero. And Alex, phenomenal dude, took a small Hispano chamber and turned it into one of the most powerful chamber in New Mexico, I would say. And it was recognized as the best Hispano chamber in the country under his leadership. So that's what he did. Well, he was one of my mentors. And he said to me, we were having breakfast at Barelas in Mr. Campos's neighborhood. And we were having breakfast, and I was eating my chicharrones, all happy. And he said something I've never forgot. He said, you know what, Brian? He said, I've lived my life by a very simple slogan. He said, it was taught to me when I was in banking, and I've never forgotten it. He's from Taos. Just a great, great guy. He said, it's real easy. He said, even you won't forget it. He said, it's real simple. My life slogan, and every single thing I do in life, I judge it by this slogan. Do right and fear no one. Do right and fear no one. We just got to do the right thing. Look, when we're pushing the envelope, we know we're pushing the envelope. When we cross that line, we know we crossed that line. And we all just have to be each other's accountability partners to do the right thing. Because it matters to New Mexico's economy. It matters to my grandchildren that I hope I get to raise in New Mexico. But you know what? Stephen, I won't get to raise my grandchildren in New Mexico if we don't do better. Because my son, who's a very proud Albuquerque High Bulldog, is now on a presidential scholarship at George Washington University studying biomedical engineering. One generation out from poverty, that's what he's doing. Imagine.
Quite an accomplishment.
Right? And it's to his credit, and it's to his educators' credit in public schools. But here's the point. What's it going to take to get him home after he graduates with that biomedical engineering degree? He's going to have to believe that the future of the state is built on integrity. And what do I get to do as state auditor? I get to hold people accountable. I get to do the right thing and fear no one. So I'm living through Alex's slogan, man. And that's what I intend to do.
Do you have, you're obviously, you know, the man for the job. You're taking our state where we need to be. You know, we're running things the right way. This is just a quick question.
Was that an indication my answers are too long?
No. Do you have any ambitions for any other offices, or is that?
Stephen, here's the deal. It's a great question. It's totally fair. But what I would tell you is this. I do have other ambitions. And those ambitions are real simple. To serve as effectively and as long as people of New Mexico think I'm the right person for the job. And I got a track record now, because if you had asked me, you know me, I ran for mayor of the city of Albuquerque. and it was a crowded field. It didn't work out, and the predecessor of this office is now the mayor of Albuquerque and not me, right? But I intended to be mayor of the city of Albuquerque. When I lost that race, people asked me to get back up, get back on the field, and work to protect New Mexico's taxpayers in this job. And I answered the call. Had you asked me 18 months before this race came up, I wouldn't have been able to tell you that I've got ambitions to be state auditor of New Mexico. I couldn't have told you that. So for me, it's never about the title, it's never about the position, it's about the service. And if people of New Mexico believe I'm the right person to serve, in whatever capacity it is, I feel like I have that debt of gratitude and I've got an obligation to say yes, and I will.
Nice. Let me ask you another question.
Okay.
We're here in Santa Fe. You know, we're with the Duke City Times. We represent the city of Albuquerque, the Duke City.
Yep.
You know, what do you think about the whole art debacle? Because everybody wants to know. What do you think about art?
Hey, I'm on the record. It was a mess.
It was a mess.
It was a mess. It's the biggest head scratcher in, you know, New Mexico's only 107 years old, but that's got to be one of the top head scratchers in New Mexico history. How do you do that? How do you do that when you don't have guaranteed financing? How do you do that? It's you know, your viewers already know. I mean, the Duke City Times, your viewers already know. That project is a mess. And it's going to be very hard to unwind. I give Mayor Keller credit. I think he's doing the best he can with a very difficult situation. What I appreciate about how he's approaching it is he's holding vendors accountable. And for me, that's right up my alley, accountability, man. And so I would say that I hope we find a way forward, and I trust that Mayor Keller is doing the best he can with a really bad situation.
Nice. Do you have, I ask these questions for everybody that I talk to.
Okay.
Do you have any pets?
I do.
How many pets do you have?
I just have one.
Uh-huh.
He's really my son's. We've had him for about 12 or 13 years. We have a little Shih Tzu.
Okay.
His name's Negrito.
Nice, that's
Yeah,
nice.
yeah.
And what other kind of hobbies do you do? You know, what's your hobby when you want to get away? What's your hobby? Do you have a special hobby? Do you golf? I mean, what do you do?
You know,
Do you read law? Do you read books?
you know-
I like to read law. I actually read law.
well, let's get you into law school.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
What's the holdup?
Well, I mean, I study online in California,
Okay,
correspondence.
excellent.
Yeah, because
Excellent.
their laws there are different. See, that's the other thing maybe we could do is New Mexico doesn't have a law reader program. They don't have no program like that. And actually, come to think about it, some people in this state say there's a lot of bureaucracy. You know, like, for example, in New Mexico, you have to go to UNM or to practice law, you have to go to UNM. Here, I mean, I know they have a
You can go
reciprocal,
anywhere in the country.
they have a reciprocation thing. I know, I've seen that, but,
No, all you have to do is pass our bar exam. You
right.
can go to law school anywhere, any accredited law school.
Some people say there's bureaucracy here. Do you think that has to do with auditing? Do you think you can pass laws or
No, I
to
can't.
open it up?
I'll never be able to pass a law.
Right.
That's not what
Oh
this
yeah,
office
because
does.
the legislator, right?
We're oversight and service.
Mhm.
But the law passing goes to the legislature. My job is oversight. Yeah.
Okay.
So look, what I would tell your viewers is, if they're pushing up against bureaucracy and they can't push open those doors, I'm happy to have them call me so I can help. I mean, you know what my hobby is?
What?
Mentoring young people.
That's a great hobby.
It's my hobby.
Yeah.
That's my hobby. And you know, we made that commercial, and it talked. It had all a bunch of my mentees in my commercial when I ran for state auditor, and we pulled that group of 50, 60 people together in 48 hours, just sending out a few text messages to some young people who I've, you know, tried to help them get where they want to be from where they are today, to be the best versions of themselves they were created to be. And I guess I love doing that. So if I were to get contacted by somebody who said, man, I just can't get through this system, that's not a great call to me because I'm state auditor. It's a great call to me because I love removing barriers for people. So for me, my hobby is removing barriers, I guess.
That was one of the questions I wanted to ask you, but I didn't know if it was too appropriate for this.
There's nothing inappropriate. I'm an open book, man.
Right. Okay. Well, one of the questions I wanted to ask you is, what do you have to say to the kids of the state of New Mexico? The
We're doing
people
better
out there that are trying to get ahead, that are trying to make their lives better. What do you have to say to the youth?
I have to say that, look, keep working hard and never give up. You know, I didn't get here overnight, and I didn't get here without being told no. I got here because I didn't give up. You have to have tenacity. And I think that the young people have to realize that there are countless people like me out there that want to see them succeed. And that, you know, you just have to be comfortable saying I need help. Look, I'm here, I said it earlier, Stephen, the community raised me. I didn't have family here. And there was no lottery scholarship back then. I mean, the American Legion gave me a scholarship, the Optimist Club gave me a scholarship, the Rotary Club gave me a scholarship, the Kiwanis gave me a scholarship, the Elks Club, all these little organizations in the community helped pay for my first year of college. And I dropped out.
So you're a self-made man.
I appreciate that, and it's self only to the extent that I was able to stand up and say, look, community, I need your help. I need you to fill the gap so I don't fall through. Look, it took me 10 years to get my bachelor's degree. The road was not a straight road for me. It's been a long journey.
Do you see yourself as a community organizer?
You know, I don't know if I get to claim that title, because I hold that title in really high esteem. You know, in some ways I think I am. You know, I almost like to think that I'm a community organization organizer.
Nice.
Which is a little different. There's a distinction there. You know, one of the things I'm most proud of in my adult life is having founded the board of directors for Pope Joy Hall, which, as you know, is the premier performing arts center in New Mexico. And we hired a phenomenal leader. His name was Tom Tkach, and he came to me and said, look, I have this idea of creating a board for Pope Joy Hall to help us raise money so we could do more outreach and expose young people to the performing arts that otherwise wouldn't have a chance to be exposed to the performing arts. So there's this thing called the School Time Series. And when we started the board of directors almost 17 years ago now, maybe even 19 years ago, when we started that board, I think they had 1,800 kids a year go through that program. I may have my numbers off, but the last time I checked, I think it was 18,000. And maybe it was 3,400 kids and 34,000, because it doesn't sound right. No, you know what it is? You're not gonna believe this, but check me on this. And then you can put a little comment on your link to you check the numbers.
Okay.
But I think this is what it was. When we started the board, they were serving 5,400 kids a year and giving them discounted tickets so that they could, these are Title I schools, right? The lower income families that, again, they're never gonna be able to afford to take their kids to the plays, to performing arts, to musicals, to Broadway shows. And for many of them, they've never even set foot on a campus. So how can we expect our children to dream of going to college if they're not even going on the campus? Like, this program allows kids to actually be on campus and to be exposed to performing arts. And I think when we started, I think these numbers are right. We started that board, there was 5,400 kids. The last time I checked, 54,000 kids in 1 year went through Pope Joy Hall on that same program. And they've raised millions of dollars with that board now. The Spanish Colonial Arts Society, I'm passionate about preserving and promoting our culture. You know, I served on Pope Joy's board for 10 years. I was chair of the board for 5 of those 10 years. Then I went over to the Spanish Colonial Arts Society, which owns the Museum of Spanish Colonial Art and puts on Spanish Market. You know about Spanish Market, right? With the Spanish artists on the plaza in Santa Fe. Mm-hmm. And Jim Long and I and some others had this idea that we would create a cultural corridor that ran all the way from northern New Mexico down to Las Cruces. And that we'd take Spanish Market from just being a Santa Fe thing to being a cultural corridor kind of thing. And we did that. We created a Spanish Market in Albuquerque and a Spanish Market in Las Cruces. And it's been phenomenal. The Museum of Spanish Colonial Art is thriving. And I served on that board for many years. And so for me, I like to think of myself as being a community organization organizer. because I've been able to lift up those boards. I've been able to help empower them to do things that they didn't even realize they had the capacity to do. And it's had a deep impact on different communities that I care about.
So, how are you faring in Santa Fe in this
The oldest capital of this
political?
is a great place.
Yeah.
I love
So
Santa
everything's
Fe.
going great?
I drive up here every day and you know.
Where do you drive from?
I live on the old gravel pit in Albuquerque.
Okay.
They're on Fosuna.
Okay.
So I'm on the north side of town, and as you know now, my office is on the south side of Santa Fe. So it really only takes me 45, 50 minutes to get here. And I love it. I mean, I leave my house at 6 in the morning, 6:30, and I'm here by 6:45, 7 o'clock, 7:15. And I have to peel myself out of my desk to go home at night. Because I'm inspired by the people that work here. I'm inspired by the mission of this office to embrace excellence and protect New Mexico's taxpayers. What a great job.
Yeah, it's a great job.
Like, they're gonna have to, I'm gonna be asking them to change the statutes so I could run for a second and third term.
Right.
I can only run for 2 terms.
Right.
If the voters think I'm still the right person for the job after 4 years. But this is just such a great office.
So this is such a great interview. I want to ask a question.
Okay.
How do you, when you, let's say, catch flack or when you catch pullback on your policies, you seem like a great man of integrity. You seem like your policies are great for the state. What do you do when you reach somebody that's, maybe your same, that's amongst the powerful in this state? What do you do when you come across somebody that's not necessarily, game for your clean operations?
Yeah. It's a good question, Stephen. I think the benefit that I have is I've been consistent for 20 years. Like, I've been involved in public policy discussions and building up communities and working to make a difference in the lives of the people I care about for 20 years, like consistently in the public eye. And I think that even if you disagree with my policies, you know that whatever I'm advocating for is coming from the right place. That there's no malicious intent on my part. I'm not doing it to be disagreeable. I'm not all sin vergüenza just trying to piss you off. I'm doing it because I'm truly passionate about whatever it is that I'm advocating for. And people say, how do you raise all that money? For my birthday, this year I put a little fundraiser on my Facebook because my wife and I and Fred Perez founded a law camp at the university. And we've raised over $300,000 with the New Mexico Hispanic Bar Association and UNM. Every summer we bring 24 kids on campus for a law camp. We pay for everything, room, board, everything. And we expose them to the university again. And they're 7th and 8th graders. Because when we started this program, we said, how do we change the face of what a college graduate looks like in New Mexico, right? How do we get young people of color to think about going to college? Because we had all these anti-dropout programs and recruitment programs for high school students. But the problem with that, Stephen, was it's too late. Kids are deciding to drop out in middle school. By the time they get to 9th grade, they're checking out. So I said, we're gonna start a pipeline program in middle school. Now we have college graduates. Now we have doctors and lawyers and business leaders and all that went to my law camp in 7th and 8th grade. And so I was just gonna say that, so the point of all that was just to say this, that I put that up on my Facebook and said, hey, it's my birthday. I'm trying to raise a little bit of money. I wanna raise 3 scholarships for 3 students. So it's $2,500. Can you make a contribution of $49 for my 49th birthday? We raised over $2,500 in 48 hours. Now, why is that? Because people know that when I ask for help, when I say, can you give me a contribution? They know that 100% of the time I'm doing it to benefit someone else. I'm doing it to benefit an organization. I'm where I need to be. Man, I've got a beautiful roof over my head, a very modest home on the old gravel pit, 1,900 square feet. I got 2 cars that run great. Both of them have over 120,000 miles on them, and they never leave me on the side of the road, knock on wood. I've got all I need. I've got a wonderful wife of 23 years and a son who's 21, and I'm very proud of. Rafael is the light of my life, and Aleli is, my wife is an immigrant from a third world country who's got a civil engineering degree and a master's in math. She's working on her PhD. You know what she's doing with her career? For almost 20 years now, she's now a nationally board certified teacher, Golden Apple Teacher of Distinction, working on her PhD and trying to change the lives of kids in one of the deepest pockets of poverty in Albuquerque at Van Buren Middle School.
I want to say something.
She inspires me every day.
You keep on going back to the youth and how you help them. And one thing that I know that works, I know what you're doing works, and it's crazy that you say that. My brother, he was born a genius. He's a Princeton Fulbright scholar.
Wow.
He's really smart. His junior year at New Mexico State, I was an at-risk youth in Albuquerque, and he goes, you know what? I'm taking you. You're going to college. And I'm like, what? I raised $1,500. I went to NMSU. He tutored me. I got a 4.0 my first year. I was on the lottery scholarship. Changed my life. So I know that when you
awesome.
take kids
Awesome.
and you send them to the university,
It's a great story.
even if you're there, it works. So I know that your program and what you're doing is working. I know that you're a man of integrity. And I look forward to seeing you in the future. Hopefully I want to work with you as doing interviews or running ads for you or whatever I got to do to make you the governor or whatever you're going to do, or the mayor, because we need people like you. I just want to say that.
Stephen. Thank you, Stephen. And I appreciate it very much. I enjoyed meeting your colleague, Mr. Campos. I appreciate you coming up here to the office. I would just say that, I really do believe that my success is proportionate to the success I've helped others achieve. And living the life of service that I aspire to live has been incredibly enriching. I feel very blessed to be where I'm at. I'm grateful every day. And as a result of that gratitude, I try and be as responsive as I possibly can. When you reached out to me, did I respond quickly?
Yes, it was amazing. It was amazing.
So I kind of have a
Open
reputation
doors.
for that. And
Yeah.
so my goal, and this is day number 32 in office for me here, I hope that when I look back at the end of my term, I can say I'm as responsive today as I was 48 months ago, because I never want to lose that passion that I have to be extremely responsive. If you call me and you say, Brian, can you help me with this? I mean, I start with yes. Some people start with no, right? Like, because it's easier. No, I don't have time. No, I can't do that. People say, oh, you're so busy. I say, no, I'm not busy. I'm enriched. I may be occupied, but I'm never too busy. I'll always make time.
Do you have any, I know you do the mentoring thing, what is your next top secret plan that you're going to do? What's your next venture that you're thinking about, or you're thinking about doing? Like, what's in there that you're about to do, is there anything?
So you're going to scoop it. You're going to scoop it. So I'll tell you. So I've got all my mentoring, and then men that know me closely know that I have a spiritual men's group on Thursday mornings that we meet on Thursdays. I get up at 4 a.m. because I have to start the coffee by 5 a.m. so it percolates by 6, because I've got anywhere from 25 to 40 men that join me every week to really support each other on becoming the best men that God created us to be. So I've got my mentorship for these one-on-one, all these young professionals, and then I have my men's group, and then all my other boards. But one of the things I want to do here that I realized in the first 31 days is I want to create the most robust internship program I could possibly create here at the Office of the State Auditor. I mean, I want to get young women and men who are in finance and in accounting and into government. I want to give them an opportunity to touch this stuff, to realize how they can make a difference in New Mexico by becoming civil servants. Like, you take a look at what's going on at the federal level, you take a look at the government shutdown in particular, like, you got people leaving the government in droves now saying, hey, this isn't what I signed up for. Like, as it is, I'm taking less money here than if I was going in the public sector. Like, my accountants here don't make what they can make in the public sector. They're here because they want to serve. They're civil servants, servants first.
You can tell that. I could kind of tell that when
You
you're
get the
in here.
vibe? Yeah.
Yeah, you're like, these people, they're like part of the state. They want to, they're part of the government. Like, they want to help.
That's right. And so for me, it's going to take people like me, I think, to reach out to communities and say, I know you're watching what's going on at the federal government. So none of you want to get involved in government because it's disgusting right now. So I got to do right, fear no one, and show people that you can make a difference in government. And that not everybody in government is a maldito, right? Like, There are good people that want to make this state enjoy its maximum potential, and we got so much potential. We have so much potential with the 14 generations of families that we have in New Mexico. I mean, we have the history, the texture, the people, the first majority minority state. We've had 2 Hispanic female governors in a row. We've got our first female Hispanic from southern New Mexico serving in Congress. We've got the first Native American from the Central District, from the Duke City, who, I've watched her grow up in politics. I watched her be a community organizer. You want to talk about community organizing? When I was chair of the party, she was doing my Native American outreach, putting up little pop tents, little 8x8 pop tents, and sitting on the reservations trying to register voters. Now she's serving in Congress. Single mom, recovered alcoholic, growing up as a Native American in New Mexico where Native Americans have not had a voice. And she's now providing that platform for them in a way that's spectacular. That's the culture we have. No other state has that opportunity to enjoy that kind of potential. And now we're here. Now the table is set. And now the obligation's on us. And I don't take it lightly.
That's phenomenal. It's been a real pleasure.
Pleasure's mine, Esteban.
Interviewing you, Brian.
Pleasure's mine.
Thank you. This is State Auditor Brian Colon, and I'm sure we're going to be interviewing you and tracking you and taking pictures of you in the future, wherever your campaign leads you.
Just call me anytime.
Right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.